All right, we are recording, so we are on the. Well, we can always edit, but here we go.
Yeah, cool. So you want me to start it off?
Yeah, go ahead, give it a
I'll be the
kick us
interviewer.
off, John.
All right, great. Hey, Marcus, thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me a little bit today. I appreciate it. Just so everyone knows, we have the Honorable Marcus Simon here, who's the delegate of the 53rd District, I believe, in
That's correct.
Northern Virginia, and also an attorney at Echo Title. You've been practicing law since what? You were like 19 years old.
Well, if you're going to introduce me that way, I want to change my virtual background here so I can put on my delegate. It's
We're
funny,
going to travel the state, my friend, so
there you
you
go.
can.
Yeah, you talk about putting on different hats, right? I think now in the era of Zoom, you put on a different virtual background. So I'm going to put on my delegate hat or my delegate background here for a minute. Yeah, so I represent the 53rd House of Delegates District, which is Falls Church and Maryfield in the Mosaic District. But like you said, I've been practicing law as a real estate attorney. Well, practicing law since 1999. Makes me feel old now.
So you were 29 at the time, because I know I looked you up. Do you know you're on Wikipedia?
I do.
That's pretty crazy.
My dad is jealous, but and proud at the same time, right?
As he should be.
So, but yeah, I've been doing real estate transactions and settlements and title work since about 2003. So I went through the last sort of boom and bust cycle, right? 2003, 4, 5, 6.
Oh yeah.
And sort of leveled
Seven.
and made everything came down. And then building back up through 9, 10, 11, 12 through really 2018, 2019. And now I guess we'll wait and see what happens. I mean, interestingly, the market doesn't seem to have slowed down a whole lot, at least not yet. Here we are on April 13th, 2020, so people know when we're talking. But as of April 13th, our deals in March and April have been busier than the year before. We've closed more deals than the year before. Now, some of the closing of deals in March may be that people are nervous. And so we've actually had a lot of people asking to move their closings forward. Okay, can I move into next week? Because everybody's worried and had been worried in particular that the lockdown would get tighter and tighter and tighter. And so, while the courthouse was still open, people want to get their transactions done. But things are still, I still find that there are lots of buyers still chasing, I think, fewer houses.
It's true.
Available.
Yeah.
So,
And what I'm finding with our agents is that when they're listing the property and it shows well and is priced right, we're still selling. We're seeing some multiple offers, but we're not seeing the numbers of offers that we've seen in the past. And overall, we're seeing fewer contracts, mostly because there are fewer properties listed. But this last week was the first week that we saw a significant drop off in the number of contracts as compared to previous year, same week. Some of that might be because of it being Passover and Easter, but it was significant enough for us to take note. Up until that time, the week prior also was off. I'll give you numbers. I probably shouldn't, but the week prior we were off about, I think, 29, 30%, which was significant enough. But the numbers for this year were off almost 50% for the week. So that's a significant number. So
that's real. I mean, I think that's a combination of things, right? I think, people that maybe were going to put their house on the market have decided not to.
Yes.
So there's less inventory. People aren't excited about getting out and about. And even though it's been some gorgeous weather, people are being told stay home, only do essential things. And so going to open houses to browse inventory and think about maybe buying a house, people aren't doing that. Only I think the buyers that are out there are folks that need a house, now for some reason or another.
Yeah, we're not holding properties open except virtually. We're scheduling appointments and scheduling them in such a way as to be able to keep people apart enough and clean up in between them. So we're doing our very best to keep it safe. And again, what I'm seeing from talking with my agents and from just watching the action is that there are fewer buyers, but there are fewer listings. Much fewer listings than the buyers. The buyers who are out there are serious, and so we're still seeing good offers, full price and above, and with great terms. But it's, the analogy that I've given is it's almost like we had a hurricane force in the real estate market 3 weeks to a month ago. It was a hurricane force, and that force came ashore 3 weeks ago. And since it's been ashore, it's losing steam, but there's still enough power in it to be very dangerous. The question is, what will happen as we move forward? And will we, how soon will we get things opened up in a safe way? And what will happen to the economy down the road? And that's to be seen.
Yeah,
So
I think you're right. Speaking of quality listings, right? Good quality stuff still sells. So I switched to my dream library here.
that's beautiful.
Someday, right? No, I mean, I think I think that things are going to slow down. Yeah, we're a lagging indicator as well on the settlement end. So what you're telling me is what I need to brace for in 2, 3, 4 weeks, because we're usually about 3, 4 weeks behind you guys as far as seeing these things. On the other hand, the other thing we're seeing a lot of is refis are coming in, because interest rates have been all over the place. They were down really low for a while. They popped back up, but they seem to have stabilized at a pretty low place as the Fed keeps trying to pump, liquidity into the market. So we're seeing people refinance. I think also some people are refinancing while they still can. I mean, they've got a job for now. And so, hey, let me pull some equity out of my house or take out a home equity loan while I still qualify for one. If I get laid off, it's going to be tougher to do that. And we do see, interestingly, at closings, we're seeing lenders are nervous about that too. And so people have to sign now a document at the settlement table that says, hey, I haven't received word that I'm about to lose my job. I'm still employed. We saw that back in 2008 and 2009, and that's a form that's made a comeback here in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think mortgage companies are concerned with, being held in abeyance for folks, regardless as to whether or not the purchaser has lost their job or has been cut back in income. They can still not make their mortgage payment for the next month, 2 or 3, and while they'll have to make it in the future, that makes a difference to the mortgage company up front. So we'll see how that affects the market overall. So if you could, switch gears a little bit back to that. Let's go back to Richmond, shall we?
Okay.
So I understand that some of the legislation that's in the works for the governor to sign might have run into a hiccup or two, or 3 even, especially.
Well, so the deadline actually was over the weekend. So we now know what the governor is going to sign and what he's going to veto, what he's going to amend. And so in Virginia, it's important to understand that he has that third option, right? In the federal system, the president can either veto bills or sign them, but that's it. In the General Assembly in Virginia, the governor has the third option, which is to send down an amendment to the bill. And part of that's because we're a part-time legislature. We're not in all the time, right? At the federal level, the president vetoes it, and Congress can just go back to work the next day on reworking a different version of the bill. If the governor vetoes something in Virginia, we can't come back to deal with it again until next January. So he has that third option of sending down amendments. And probably what you're thinking about is a bill, I know it's Mary Beth's not happy with him over, which is Association Health Plan bill. It would have allowed the Realtors Association at the state or local level to allow your members to form a risk pool, an insurance pool. So since most realtors are independent contractors, they don't count as employees, and so you can't form an employee pool. But we allow them to, since they affiliate through these associations, to form a nice big insurance pool. That passed the General Assembly with, I think, 3 no votes in the House. And the governor has amended it with what's called a reenactment clause, which is sort of a soft veto. He's essentially saying it won't become the law unless it passes again next year in identical form, which is sort of the same thing as saying I'm vetoing it, try again next year, right? But it's an amendment, so it's because a lot of Democrats voted for it. I'll give you the sort of inside baseball here on this. Because a lot of folks had a lot of support, he didn't want to just go ahead and veto it. But association health plans, things get very political around them, and they're viewed by some as a way of undermining the Affordable Care Act generally. And the more association health plans you have, and they're there's some that aren't as good as what we're going to do for the realtor. Some are just really what we call junk plans that allow people to sort of bypass the insurance requirement. And so I think this one's sort of gotten lumped in with the plans that really do undermine the Affordable Care Act. And that's what the governor's concern is. I hope to speak with him and his administration over the next couple of weeks and maybe talk them out of this position and say, hey, listen, we voted for this thing 97-3. Let's stick with it. Let's reject the amendment. Let's have this go into effect. So that's one of the things that probably ran into a hiccup for her that she was probably talking about. But there's also been some good things. I mean, and there's also going to be some things that I don't know if they're good or bad that realtors are going to have to adapt to, right? So let me start for a second with disclosures, right? We're always adding disclosure forms and new disclosures to the disclosure form. So we're adding one on radon. Most people get radon inspections anyway, but now we're giving folks advice that they may not have radon. We're doing one with energy efficiency analyses that, hey, you might want to go ahead and thinking about getting your house, analyzed for its energy efficiency. This is a good time while you have a home inspector there to look for that. We got rid of one, the old defective drywall disclosure. That said, hey, if you had this defective drywall that was, prone to catching fire when electrical places touched it and stuff like that, you had to disclose that. Most people looking at that form, like, do I have to disclose this or not? I have no idea whether I have defective drywall or not. It was never really a big problem in Fairfax, Falls Church, McLean, Arlington. It was a much bigger issue down in Hampton Roads, where a lot of builders had bought it in bulk and were using it. And so, but all that defective drywall has been disclosed and been remediated and replaced over the years to the point that nobody really has it anymore. And I saw somebody creeping in behind you there, John.
Yeah. I think she's sneaking up on me. We better be careful.
Okay, it wouldn't be a Zoom call without somebody doing something like that. At any rate, we got rid of that disclosure form. So you'll no longer have to explain to your clients, what is this defective drywall disclosure? Do I have it or do I not? How do I find out? That whole conversation we've gotten rid of because that problem.
Because we don't know.
Because nobody knows. We did also add a disclosure about lead pipes. And whether if you have lead pipes in your house. That's not such a big issue with residential, single-family residential stuff, but it's a bigger deal because it's also in the Landlord-Tenant Act now. So for landlords in large buildings that have lead pipes, they've got to be able to warn their prospective tenants about that.
So it's for tenants or for sellers?
It applies to both in both situations. It's just something that you're rarely going to see in the sale of a single-family house. Although, again, some condominiums may have lead pipes, and we'll let folks know about that too. The other one that's going to be an interesting one to sort of adapt to is the governor this weekend signed something called the Virginia Values Act, which extends fair housing protections to some new protected classes. Nothing radical here that realtors haven't already been doing under your code of ethics anyway. But because it creates a new cause of action, you need to be aware that you've got sexual orientation and gender identity now as a protected class. And you've got status as a veteran as a protected class under the Virginia Values Act. And then separately, we passed a bill that creates a protected class for source of income. It says you can't discriminate against people based on their source of income. And that specifically gets at Section 8 housing vouchers.
Right.
HA vouchers. So, typically for landlords, that's a much bigger deal. That one for landlords and property managers.
That's right.
Now, what the realtors did, what I helped do to negotiate on that was the advocates for this source of income non-discrimination weren't really going after the one-off single-family home buyer who maybe in our area, gets stationed. You say you work for the State Department, you get stationed overseas for a couple of years, and you're going to come back, and you don't want to sell your house. It's not a good time to sell it, so you want to rent it. Those aren't the folks we're trying to get to. So we created an exception that says if you own fewer than 5 properties, so 4 or fewer single-family homes, it doesn't apply to you. So in other words, you've got a house or 2 or 3 even, you're fine. But once you get beyond that, you're in the business of selling houses, and so you ought to be able to do the paperwork it takes to accept a Section 8 voucher. So that's one of the things. And also, one of the complaints about the source of income is that the landlord has to fill out a questionnaire for HUD and has to wait to be approved. And that process can take forever. You've got to leave your house vacant while you're waiting for it to be approved. So we said, if you haven't heard back that you're approved within 2 weeks, you can reject that tenant and not
So,
violate the source of income discrimination.
so if
So
I if I own 5 properties and let's say that somebody's using that VHDA grant program, which is great. I don't know if you've heard of it, where they'll provide, was it at 2% of the funds and a grant for certain incomes. I could not discriminate against that. I couldn't hold that and say, whoa. So today somebody might say, well, I don't know about VHDA. I'd much rather take this
right.
cash offer.
Yeah, no, right. And again, if you own a house or two, you can still do that because source of
Right.
income can be an exception. But yeah, if you own a bunch of houses, you're going to have to say, hey, listen, we're going to have to go through this process. Now, the one that's more interesting though on that front is we've added status as a veteran as a protected class.
Yeah.
And so I know there's a lot of folks out there that don't like VA loans, right? And they say, hey, I don't want to take a VA loan because of the VA appraisal. Those guys are tough. And they do inspections of the property and so forth. I think that'd be a much more, even if you fit the exception for source of income, I think that would be a difficult one to say no on now. And I would probably be advising, from a risk management perspective, I'd advise my agents to say, hey, listen, don't come out and say, we're not taking your loan. We're not taking you because you're applying for a VA loan.
Support veterans except for when they're buying homes, right?
Right, exactly. So again, I don't think that that may change the way we talk about some of these things. And I think a lot of agents, frankly, like to do when they can. But it's just we have to be careful about that.
There's just some things that VA used to do years ago when I first started in the business, before you were born, I think. Where they don't do them anymore. It used to be that the seller had to pay any points for the buyer. So it used to be there were issues where VA would hold people much tighter on certain appraisal problems, but I haven't heard about these things in years now. So I'm not sure why we still hold those things against veterans. And I'm personally I'm glad to see this. So
no, I think it'll be, like I said, I think it'll be a good thing. Just folks need to be aware of it. So
do business differently.
I mean, those are the 3 areas I think where things kind of and we'll have. I'd be glad to visit with you guys and do a more in-depth conversation about the non-discrimination stuff, because it'll be important to get the details of that right, and talk about some of the new disclosures should take care of themselves. I mean, there'll be a new form. You'll just have to make sure you're using the latest version, and then we'll see what happens. There's more landlord-tenant stuff too, which is always my least favorite thing to do, because with landlord-tenant disputes, I mean, the funny thing about those is, usually you're fighting over $2,000, maybe in a security deposit or a month's rent or something. And people are like, you recommend an attorney to me. I'm like, not really. I mean, nobody wants to take those cases. So they become sort of tough. Even if you're right, you'll lose landlord tenant sometimes.
So anything that you see with COVID that's different than what we've been hearing from everybody and their brother? I mean, we know that you're now prepared to handle those cases, and that you've got technology for us to provide the earnest money deposit, which frankly is my greatest concern right now with my agents. Every contract I see, I say to my selling agents, and my listing agents, more important, I think, for my listing agents, verify that deposit has been made, because, agents aren't dropping by the settlement attorney's offices. And
frankly, we don't want you here, right? I mean, no offense, but the fewer people you have, the better, right? And so, we, like, for instance, we keep our front door locked. And we know when we have something scheduled.
I thought you just did that to me.
Right? Or you can call me or text me from outside. We'll come let you in. But we're not encouraging walk-ins or drop-bys.
Nor should you.
So yes, we have folks that do that. The other thing we're doing is almost all of our seller sites now we do online. We do remote online notary. I run an e-notary. I was sort of a pioneer. I was an e-notary for about 2.5 years. For about 2 years and 5 months, nobody cared. Maybe did 3 online notaries. I've done 3 this morning. I've already done 3 today. We use a number of different platforms. I know some of my colleagues in the business have gotten themselves married to one particular provider, or some of them have stopped and said, look, we'll hire a mobile notary to come pass it through the window of the car, because it's easier than I find that the folks, once you kind of figure out how to do the online notary, people like it. I had a guy this morning saying, you guys, why would you ever go back to doing it the other way? This is so much easier. And he was sitting in his basement with his headset on, and he was clicking through, and we did everything, and I notarized it. I used a company called Doc Verify this morning. We also use Notary Cam. We're also getting set up on a platform called Pavaso. There's something called Sinex out there. What's interesting is different lenders now, and lenders have always sort of done this, as they're getting their feet wet with this, they're approving certain remote online closing providers. So my view is I need to be set up with all of them, so that if the lender says you have to do it through Pavaso, I can say, okay, I've got that, right? If they oh, you got to use Doc Verify, I'm like, no problem, I've got that. So we're getting, my time in between settlements is spent mostly learning the new software or filling out, writing contracts with the new companies. And also I'm trying to get my underwriter to approve. I've done some online notaries just using we're on Zoom, but there's something called WebEx, a Cisco WebEx, which is a little more secure. Not that anybody wants to hack into this conversation, John. I'm going to put it out there for the world to see. But there are some slightly more secure platforms to do the same thing. And so, we can do e-notaries pretty much any way you want to. Some platforms require all the signers to be on their own device at the same time, which can be tricky. I had one this afternoon where the husband was upstairs and I had to send the wife downstairs because the echo was getting to be too much.
Yeah.
But some of the platforms allow them both to stand in front of the same camera at the same time. So it just depends.
That's all great. And of course you're working with lenders that do the same thing. And now we have home inspectors that can do virtual home inspections. And so, and I would expect if I had a client who was a little concerned, thinking about putting their house on the market, but didn't know, if I asked, you might be willing to reach out to them. You've always been so gracious to us and our clients at McInerney that that might be helpful.
We'll help them figure it out. I mean, whether we need to help them get comfortable with the technology, or we've also done folks that don't have the tech or don't want to. I mean, we used to joke about doing them on the hood of a car, but I mean, I've done them where they stay in the car and I watch them through the window and they hand them out and I get on the hood of the car to sign my notary. Whatever needs two things. I mean, whatever's safe, and then whatever the client needs to feel comfortable is the most important thing. But for us, I mean, the transactions have to keep going. It'd be very easy just to say, you know what, we're all in lockdown, we're just going to stop and freeze. But people need to find places to live. Sellers need to move on. We got to keep the transactions going. So, our tagline for years has always been, we make it happen. And so we're committed to making it happen, even amidst everything that's going on.
Wow. Well, you always have made it happen, and I've appreciated the service you've provided to our office through the years that I've been there. Truly, it's you're an awesome individual. It's easy to forget that you are a state delegate and the things that you've accomplished, because you're just so down to earth and always ready to serve in so many different ways. And I truly appreciate it. So,
well, John, I'm happy to. I love working with your office. I like working with you. You call me and ask questions. You always ask good questions. They're not ones that everybody should know. And then you also understand the answers, which is always interesting. Not every time.
I pretend well anyhow, right?
No, you do great. So, hey, listen, this has been great and a lot of fun. I look forward to seeing you again in person someday real soon, hopefully.
Thank you.
Once it's safe again. And in the meantime, you know how to reach me.
Thank you. All the best to you and your family. Stay safe.
All right. Thanks, John. Talk to you later.
Thank you.